The copy of my friend's dog wants me to let it inside. I'd promised my friend I would house sit for him while he was overseas for a work trip. This isn't the first time I've done this. Normally, I'd jump at a quiet place to myself for a few days, but tonight the silence pressed in a little too tightly. The kind of silence that makes every sound feel intentional. Max, my friend's German Shepherd, has always been my only company. A good dog, protective, smart, honestly. The kind that makes you feel safe and assured. I was in the kitchen, halfway through a chapter of calculus problems, the kind meant to ruin your night, when Max jolted from his spot beside the couch and stalked toward the back door. A low rumble climbed out of his chest, so deep I felt it before I heard it. "Easy, buddy," I murmured, not fully looking up from the equation I was solving. He continued growling, in which he has never done. Setting my pencil down, I looked up to see he was staring at me, his eyes shifting its gaze to me and to his left. I figured he wanted to go out, for he needed to do how Mother Nature intended it to be. He stood stiff at the glass, tail straight, head low as I walked over to the sliding door. I cracked the door and let him outside. The cold air swept in, smelling faintly of pine and wet dirt. Max sprinted into the yard, barking in sharp, decisive bursts as he circled the fence line. I waited, watching his silhouette dart through the patchy glow of the porch light. Nothing unusual out there. No raccoons, no deer, no wandering neighbor. Just the yard, the darkness, and Max acting like something was out there. Eventually he trotted back with that stiff, unsettled gait dogs get when their instincts haven't quite powered down. I let him in, gave him a pat, tried to shake the feeling crawling up my spine. Back to calculus. Back to pretending integrals were the only nightmares creeping up on me tonight. 10 minutes passed before Max growled again, only this time I heard him bark. A single thunderous warning that cracked the quiet open like bone. Then another, and another. "Seriously," I groaned, shoving my chair back. I looked at the clock. It was late, past 12. I'll finish up the question I was on and call it a night, I thought. My friend hadn't mentioned Max having anxiety, or night terrors, or whatever this was. I wasn't used to big dogs, especially ones who looked ready to fight shadows. I walked toward the back sliding door, irritation simmering. "Max, if this is about a squirrel, I swear." But the moment I reached the door, the barking stopped. Just stood there, muscles trembling, eyes locked on the tree line. When I opened the door, he refused to go out this time. Puzzled, I leaned down and pet his coat, reassuring him. "This time I'll out with him." When I opened the door, he refused to go out this time. Puzzled, I leaned down and pet his coat, reassuring him. "This time I'll out with him." I stepped onto the porch with a flashlight, scanning the yard the way I imagined a responsible adult might. Nothing. The beam stretched into the trees, catching only branches swaying lazily in the breeze. He stayed close to me for some reason. This mountain of a dog was whimpering. Is he scared? Of what? I felt uneasy myself. The night was colder than it should, and I too felt eyes peering at me the same as Max did. It was also not ensuring that the night was quiet. Way too quiet. No sound of cicadas buzzing or frogs ribbiting. Not even the flow of the wind. When I heard a tree branch snap, I hurried us both back inside. I went back inside feeling foolish, but the unease clung to me like a static charge. Max followed me in but didn't lie down. He just lingered near my legs, heavy breaths fogging the quiet again. I settled at the table once more. Tried to slip back into numbers and lines and problems with answers. Tried to ignore the way Max's ears flicked toward the door every few seconds. It must have been half an hour later when the house finally settled into a rhythm again. Max, after pacing in anxious half circles and sniffing the hall as if expecting someone to emerge, eventually curled up beside the couch. His breaths lengthened, then deepened, and before long that steady, soft snore slipped out of him. Seeing him asleep should have comforted me. It didn't. If anything, it made me more aware of how exhausted I was, and how badly I wanted the night to end. I turned back to the table, struggled through one more problem, and let my mind drift. Numbers blurred. My own eyes drooped. Then, bark. I jolted so hard my pencil snapped in my hand. Another bark followed, loud, sharp, insistent, echoing through the kitchen. I rubbed my face, already irritated. "Max, come on, man," I muttered under my breath. Again, but the annoyance evaporated the moment I looked toward the living room. Max wasn't at the back door. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't even awake. His bed was empty. The couch was empty. My heartbeat stuttered. I scanned the room, waiting for him to pop out from some spot he'd never gone before. But the barking kept going, each echo threading into my nerves like wire pulled tight. With a creeping dread, I walked toward the sliding door. The kitchen tiles felt cold beneath my feet. The house felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. I reached the back door and peered through the glass. Nothing, just the moonlit yard, just the fence, just the distant shimmer of the tree line. But the barking didn't sound faint, it didn't sound distant. It sounded like it was right outside. I slid the door open barely an inch, just enough for the winter air to slip in, sharp and metallic on my tongue. And that's when it hit me. The barking wasn't coming from inside the house. The barking wasn't coming from inside the house. It was coming from the yard, exactly where I'd had Max earlier. I froze, fingers numb against the cold glass. And in that suspended moment, it dawned on me that I had no idea when Max had left my side, or if he ever really had. Before I could gather the courage to call out to him, a low growl rippled through the room behind me. Deep, wet, wrong. My skin tightened. I turned my head slowly, terrified of what I might see. Max stood in the middle of the kitchen, but not standing the way dogs do. He was upright, balanced on his hind legs, towering, swaying slightly like a puppet on invisible strings. His fur was matted with something dark and wet. His eyes, those warm brown eyes I'd grown used to, were gone, replaced by pits of glistening black. A fresh line of blood slid down the side of his muzzle, and yet, he smiled, wide enough to show every tooth. The barking outside stopped. The thing in my kitchen didn't.